First of all, I want to welcome everybody to our ribbon cutting here at Manatee Literacy Council. I'm glad you all came. I hope we have others come in the future, tonight. Anyway, we're going to have Marilyn Cox, our executive director, and Shannon, the store manager from next door here, is representing Goodwill, and they're going to do the ribbon cutting for us, okay? Okay?
You count.
1, 2, 3. They're not very sharp scissors, so keep chewing. Thank you. And welcome to our new offices.
And I just want to, while we have Shannon here, because she's so busy, thank Goodwill. This is all possible through the kindness and the partnership of Goodwill. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Hello again. Again, my name is Roger Boos. I'm the board president for the Manatee Literacy Council. We want to welcome you to our open house here in our new brand new facilities here, thanks to the generosity of Goodwill Industries of Minnesota County. I'm going to take a minute and introduce our board of directors, and then we're going to have our authors take their turns up here and tell you a little bit about literacy and their literature books, okay? So first of all, Marilyn. Where's Marilyn Cox? Oh, Marilyn standing up. On our board of directors, we have Sherry Emmy, Autumn Steiner, Carolyn Kappenmacher, Judy Garland, yes, that's her real name, and Mayu Fielding. Oops, excuse me, Mayu. We have one other director who's not here right now, and that is Sherry Harris. She, I don't know, hasn't made it here yet. So anyway, that's our board of directors, the people that help me keep the organization running. So, and I want to thank every one of you for coming. Can I have everybody stand who's a tutor with our program, just so we can see? Stand up. Thank you. Thank you for your help. We need more volunteers all the time. I think I got two other people that I want to thank for coming here. One of them is Amy with Habitat for Humanity. And I want to introduce Tom Melville. He's with the Sarasota Literacy Council. We work closely with them in trying to get our students paired up and stuff like that, so we appreciate all his help. Okay, other than that, again, we are very indebted to Goodwill. They offered us this office space when they weren't going to use it, offered it to us to use, and a nice central location, and we appreciate the new office, and we want to welcome everybody here to celebrate with us, okay? I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn, who's going to continue with the program. Thank you.
Well, thank you to METV and Charles Clapsaddle, and I forget your name. I knew it earlier. Richard. Thank you, Richard. Okay. There are filming and our sound folks, and this is going to be available on MTV, and it's going to go national, and we're going to get, what's that word for social media when it goes viral? Yes. We're going viral tomorrow, so stand by. Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest authors today. I would like to say this was a mystery author thing that we had going on here, and unfortunately, I would like to say that Stephen King does send his regrets that he couldn't be with us this evening. He really did try. He's on tour right now across the world with his new book. So he said, be sure and give him at least 1.5 years advance notice, and he'd be here the next time. Also, some of the other local authors that actually wanted to be here and couldn't be. I know you're all disappointed that Randy Wainwright isn't with us this evening. He and Carl Heisen and Emily Richards and Heather Graham all sent their regrets, and they would like to be here next time. We just need to get a little earlier start on it. So, Autumn and I are going to start sending out social media right away for 2 years from now, and we hope to get all these folks. Okay, the first person on our agenda for this evening, I am so happy to introduce Mayu, who helped get us a wonderful lady that she's going to tell us a little bit about. Unfortunately, the hurricane sent her schedule afloat and she couldn't attend, but she did send some words of wisdom in her poster. So Mayu?
Okay, so I am actually a teacher, and I do this all the time, but not in front of microphones. So today I'm happy to be introducing Gail Gay, who is not here with us today because of Hurricane Irma. But she did send 100 posters of her poetry, which is beautiful. As you can see, it's called Painted Words, for us to share. She would love that you guys, if you have a donation for us, that would be great. But anyhow, Gail is a wonderful teacher. She's retired from Sarasota County Schools and still works as a literacy teacher here in Manatee County. She works for the Pittsburgh Pirates as well as for other organizations. She is a wonderful person, poet, mother, and I have a little more to share with you if you'd like to know about her when you come to our table. But the one thing I'd like to say is one thing she sent me on a text that I thought would strike us all, and it's, literature defines a culture, and literacy saves it. And I thought that was very interesting and thoughtful, and wanted to share it with you. And that's about my time, so thank you so much for having me.
Mayu, I am so impressed. We told Mayu 2 minutes and thought that she'd probably talk 10 because she she is so good at that. Okay, the next person that I would like to introduce has a special place in my heart. His name is Steve Cork, and he is my little brother.
I hate to correct the executive director, but actually she's my little sister. And our dad sits over here. It's Jack with the shirt and the phone in his hand. I appreciate the opportunity, Marilyn, to be able to speak, but when she first asked me, I said, Marilyn, I said, what do you want me to talk about? I said, you know, it's a different situation, and I'm not sure how much I should explain. And she said, well, just talk about yourself, and that'll be good. And I can't think of anything I'd more enjoy talking about me. So this is going to be a lot of fun. One of the first things that I get asked is, and I'll talk about 3 different things. One is what got me into writing. 2 is I'll talk briefly about my books. And 3, how this all connects for me to the Literacy Council. So first of all, let me share with you, I'll tell a couple anecdotes, and I'll talk to you about how I got started in writing, really. All of my career in the Army for 27 years, I'm writing a little bit at a time, but not really all the time. But the Army saw fit to assign me as a director of a joint task force to write joint warfighting books. And I thought they were nuts. I wasn't a writer. Nobody trained me. I got put in the job. Army's famous for that. But what we did was write tactics, techniques, and procedures for the military, Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force, and I had officers from all of the services in my directorate, and that's what we did. And these manuals, we called them, not books or novels, but manuals, were signed by the leadership of our military across the spectrum. And they were used extensively in the Gulf Wars. We learned a lot in a lot of our other experiences, and it became clear that we needed some agreement on how we were going to jointly warfight. And one of the anecdotes that I like to share in that regard is that you might have heard the name Norman Schwarzkopf. And you might have also seen the picture right at the end of the Gulf War, first Gulf War, where this long road of vehicles and equipment went for as far as the eye could see, and all destruction. And that's what prompted George Bush to say, you know, time out, and we're going to stop this. But the way in which that picture was taken was a manual that I helped write. Norman Schwarzkopf said that the platform that took the picture wasn't going to come into theater unless we had an agreement on how this equipment was going to be managed. And the Air Force thought they ought to have priority. They flew the darn thing. The Marines said, hey, you know, I got 2 divisions over here. I'd sure like to know what the battlefields look like. And the Army had the biggest units. They thought they should know. What it was a giant camera on an airplane. And it was very top secret at the time, but it's not anymore. And it could stand off from the forward edge of the battle area about 300 miles and take intricate details of what was happening on the battlefield. But all of the services were fighting about who was going to control it. And Schwarzkopf says, you're not bringing that in I'm not going to have a cat fight in my backyard while I'm trying to fight a war. So it came on, my little group got tagged, said, you're it. Write us something that everybody's going to agree to on how we're going to use this machine. I mean, it's a fabulous piece of equipment. And so we did. In about 4 weeks, we put together some words, and we got it to the Joint Chiefs Staff and briefed a bunch of people, and eventually they bought into it, not enough that Schwarzkopf would let it into theater, obviously, because that's what happened. It got up very high, took these pictures, and that was shown to George Bush, and he said, that's enough. And so that's the antidote on what they called J-STARS, which was a major platform in the first Gulf War. And that was my contribution to that. But it was a lot of fun at the time. It wasn't so much fun at the time, but afterwards I can say it was a lot of fun. Now, how about my books? I've got 2 here. One is called Night Moves. The other is called Sir, I Can Explain. Now, and I said a lot of that when I was in the Army. Sir, I think I can explain this, but that's what prompted the title. Night Moves is a book about a woman in the military. Of course, my military experience, they tell authors, write about something you know, so it's got a military theme to it. Both my books do. And so this woman is a central character in the military police, and she brings to ground a group of terrorists who've stolen top secret weapon systems. Now, at the time the book was written, the idea of having a bot, you might know what a bot is, the little teeny fly-sized specks of camera systems that can fly around like a fly and take pictures, and they can broadcast a picture back, and they have them on the forward edge of the battle area where Marines and soldiers can fly bots out into the battlefield and see what's happening and go around corners and see where the bad guys are. So that's called a bot. I've forgotten what the acronym stands for now, but at the time that I wrote my book, a very top secret weapon system was they were trying to mount those in bullets so that bullets would be fired and go around corners and kill people and go over buildings and go straight down. But that's not, it's been abolished, but that was a concept behind that book that some terrorists had stolen the secrets for that particular type of equipment, and they were going to turn the world into on its ear. And so she was able to bring them to task and through a lot of thrills and spills and exciting chapters. And I'm told it's a page turner, and if you want to try to read it to go to sleep at night, it's not a good idea. It's really fast-paced, lots of action, and it definitely keeps your attention. Many have told me that this book is one that they couldn't put down, and they read straight through. So, at any rate, that's my first effort. My second effort was called Sir, I Can Explain. Same cast of characters, and a lot of fun. You'll find my books have a little bit of romance, have a little bit of excitement, not a little bit, lots of excitement, but a little bit of humor. You know, I'm constantly reminded that my nickname used to be in the Army Steve Serious, and so I try to offset that in my writing by adding a little humor in the book. So, at any rate, both of them have a tad in that, and then but this one is about a more serious topic that many of you probably know about today. In Southwest Florida, human trafficking is a big issue, and this book is about human trafficking. And the issue in our community is what prompted me to write that book and have the subject human trafficking. But in this particular book, it reveals some scenarios that are actually true as far as the manner in which they have operation centers to wholesale humans, be they children or women or even young boys. It's more factual than it is a tale. And it's, again, a really exciting book, lots of twists and turns, lots of fast page-turning excitement that gets your adrenaline running. But both books, did I mention they're for sale? I don't know if I covered that part yet or not, but I will have them back here, and you'll have an opportunity to get a first edition book signed by the author. You don't get that opportunity very often, but I'll be here to do that. And I hope you take advantage of the fact that they're on fire. Did I mention that they're going to be on sale? But I'll have an opportunity to sign them if you like. Now, my last thing, I know I'm running at 10 minutes. Marilyn's back there. Wait a minute. No, she's not. Time to go. They're putting them to sleep. All right, now how does this relate to the Literacy Council? Well, I tell people, and some people don't quite grasp what I'm trying to say, but I feel like I'm a very lucky man. I've had great fortune in my life, and not the least of which is my wonderful wife, but my roommate for 53 years. Raise your hand, Peggy. There we go. Put up with me for 53 years. Quite an achievement. But at any rate, being a lucky man, I thought Peggy and I both felt that we should find a mechanism for giving back. And what better way to do that than a Literacy Council? I started in Sarasota County. I'm probably going to stay in Sarasota County. But at any rate, Maryland got me started on that. And it proved to be something very interesting to me, and the people that I became associated with were fascinating. And they had incredible backgrounds, and many of them extremely well educated. My latest client or learner, I guess I'm learning more from him, but he's from South Africa, and he came to the United States on a scholarship to Yale, if you can imagine. 25,000 people apply for an international scholarship to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, and he was one of the recipients. Really bright guy, but he had trouble with the English language, and he wants to write a book, and he thinks he's going to write a Pulitzer Prize novel. Probably not, but nonetheless, he's trying, and he needed to have a little better grasp of vocabulary, a little better grasp of how you put words together and punctuate and conjugate verbs and that sort of thing. And so we've had a great time, and frankly, he's helped contribute to my book that I'm writing now called A Silent Death, and it's about weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein actually developed. But at any rate, he's helped me a lot. And so I feel like the Literacy Council has been a big part of my life for I guess, 10 years now. And ever since I really retired. And that has been my experience. I've had 5 learners, and this latest one has become a best friend. He came to Thanksgiving dinner with us. He went to Christmas dinner with us. And that's the kind of relationships that you can establish with learners of the English language. They're just like us, but they need that one more leg up to become a part of our group, our society, and become successful in our community. And I don't probably have to tell very many people here, but we're not going to be successful as a community. We're not going to be successful as individuals if we don't have a grasp of the English language. And so that way, this is what I feel has been the impetus behind my efforts in that regard. And I have a scripted line I'm supposed to read. Are you ready? Brace yourself. I would like to conclude with one thought. Low literacy is a global crisis that affects us all. That's why it's so important to understand the issues and confront the facts head on. Only then can we stand together and fight for change. Thank you very much.
Isn't he wonderful? Okay, thank you, Steve. I have to just add one little thing to Steve's being active with the Literacy Council. I actually drug him and Peggy to a tutor training, Kicking and Screaming. And they came out being wonderful, dedicated tutors who have worked with many, many learners through the years. And unfortunately, they're stuck with Tom, Melville, and Sarasota Literacy. But hey, I tried to get them to move to Bradenton, and they wouldn't do it. So what can I say? So our next speaker is Sandy Prindle. And Sandy is, if anybody is to blame for keeping this author's a secret, it is Sandy. And his lovely wife, Joanne, who is a tutor for us. Linda. Oh, I am so bad with names. I apologize. I even call my kids the wrong names. So, but I want to tell you just a little bit about Sandy because he's so shy. I know you guys have probably just seen how shy he is. He doesn't want to talk about himself. He and Linda are from Fort Worth, and he was a judge for 24 years in Fort Worth, Texas, president of the Judge Association, yeah, and the winner of 3 top prizes, top awards. And we have the pleasure of Linda and Sandy moving here, and he is full of informational history and has written several books and is going to tell us of his discovery. And when I saw how many people he draws to his talks, that's why I decided that if we advertised him, we wouldn't have a room big enough. So it's all his fault. Sandy, thank you so much for coming.
I never want to get my wife's name wrong. She is a special lady. She is responsible for finding a publisher for my first book, and she found them in 3 weeks. I had spent 2 years working on it to no avail. She pulled this old manuscript off a dusty shelf one time during spring cleaning and said, "Did you write this?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, can I read it?" I said, "Certainly." So she sits there for 3 days going through that. She came back. She said, "You wrote this book? You've got to get it published." I said, "Yeah, fat chance. Me and my agent been working for 2 years in New York. Couldn't get it done." She did it in 3 weeks. She's special. She and I have the perfect marriage. We had an agreement that we came to before we got married. She said, "Sandy, I want you to make the big decisions in our marriage. I'll make the little ones." As a consequence of that, she decides where we live, what type of car I'm going to drive, the clothes that I wear, the type of work that we do, where we go on our vacations, and what dogs we're going to have and what we're going to name them. But I make the big decisions. I get to decide how much money the U.S. is going to fund the UN. I get to decide what our policy is in the Middle East, who is going to be our next president. And so far, we have had the perfect marriage with no fights. Y'all remember that, guys? Okay. At first, I do want to address literacy, but more important than that, I want to mention interest. Our young people are not reading like they should. Part of this is parenting. Part of this is people that are too busy to get their children interested in books. My father got me interested in reading when I was 6 years old. And my message to the community today is simply this. A good book is better than a good movie on the same story, because you can put it down and come back to it when you can. You're going to get more information about the characters in the book, the demographics in the area that they live in, the infrastructure that they work with as far as the type, how modern their area is, and whether they have cars to drive or whether they ride camels. It's all there, and you're going to pick all of that up with an author that researches his subject carefully and thoroughly, and has the skills to write a book, as the Colonel mentioned a minute ago, you can't put down. And that's what all of our authors strive to do. And that's research and to write a book with what is called teasers. And that's where at the end of every chapter, you cannot put it down because you know something big is going to happen in the next chapter. And so that is the message that I have today, and that the job that all of us have today is to go to the schools in our community and offer to read to the children and read them stories that they find interesting, and tell them that the best entertainment that they can have that doesn't cost a lot of money is books. And then they're going to learn how to be literate. They're going to learn the history of our country. And not from a teacher, a high school history teacher who makes them memorize dates. That's the worst way to teach history, I know. The best way is to teach by concept. And if we do our job as tutors and go to the schools and read to the children and get them interested and excited about books and the stories that they tell, then our literacy is going to improve in this country, as well as many other aspects of it. All of you mentioned that I was a judge for 24 years. I also taught law for the last 12 years of my career to the other judges in the state of Texas, mostly on landlord tenants, but other things. So I'm used to talking, I'm used to teaching, and I'm used to telling stories. Telling stories, I have been told that I'm pretty good at it. And my first book happened because a close friend told me that I needed to start writing some stories that I had heard. And so most weekends back in the early 90s, we would go to my small cruiser on Lake Texoma and fish. We'd drop a line in the water, turn on the stereo. If the fish were biting, great. If not, we read novels. We read hundreds of novels. Some were good, some were not. And so we started batting back and forth what was wrong with the novels that were not good, and how in the world did these authors get published. And so there are certain mechanics that you have to learn about every book. The first one, and the Colonel has already mentioned this before, you write what you know about. So my first novel is a legal murder mystery thriller. But ladies, did I mention they're all for sale? The first book is about a judge in trouble. People are trying to kill him, and he doesn't know who, and he doesn't know why. All of a sudden, he is a target. And this story, ladies, has a very unusual aspect in it that you'll never see in another story. This tells you how a man can end up with two women at one time, and it's not his fault. You got to read the book to see how that ends. I created a character in this book that was a hitman. And as I continued writing and developing his character, I liked him more and more. And so in my second book, which is my best seller, it's got a lot of military operations in it. And in this book, We have a hitman who regrets his past. He is terminally ill, and he goes on a mission for a friend, chasing the world's #1 fugitive, who is a corporate criminal who has stole billions from his employees and has disappeared in a puff of smoke. And this story is about his quest to find this man while he can still function. It has a lot of surprises in it. Ends up with a sizzling love story, ladies. And it's got a poignant ending that is like no other book I have ever read or written. And it is a must read. It is my bestseller. Did I mention it was for sale? They're all $15 plus tax. If you buy all three, I'll pay the tax. The sequel to this book is called Revolution 2. This book happens this year. I wrote it in 2012, but it happens this year in July. It happens on Bastille Day, and on that day there is a big rally in Washington, D.C., and a group of conspirators use that big crowd in front of the Washington Monument and fires a missile into the Blue Room of the White House and takes out both parties, all of their leaders. In Chapter 1, we start all over again. A committee of 7 runs both the legislative and the executive branch for an interim period while we're training new leaders to run for the presidency. And this book tells the story of that interim period where they're trying to hold this nation together and all of the challenges and unbelievable betrayals that happen. Did I mention there was a love story in it? Okay. This book has won a national award because a man emerges from this group of 7 on this committee, and he comes up with new ideas that work on our federal deficit, our immigration policies, our fuel crisis, and one of my favorite subjects, congressional misconduct. And all of these things are in this book, and because of the ideas put forth in this book, I won a national award, and I'm very proud of it. Did I mention it was for sale? Anyway, I want to thank Marilyn and all of you for the opportunity to speak here. And once again, I cannot emphasize enough, go to the schools and read to the children and get them interested in books. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for your participation with us here today. Okay, last but certainly not least is a very new and dear friend, Joanne Glim. She has a lot of heartfelt literacy to tell us about. And then when Joanne's done, I would like for you to know that if you would like to visit the tables, there is a sign-in sheet. If you want a signed autographed copy of the first edition of their next books or one of these books, please let our authors know how much you appreciate them. And be sure and see Mayu for the posters. So Joanne, I'm going to let you take the stand.
Was that applause for me getting up, or was it because you're happy to see me here? I want to thank you so much for having me come today. This means a lot to me, all of you. Words to me mean a lot. To me, there's a music to all the words. And from that music, you can create passion, you can create healing. And so when you learn how to read, you learn how to put the words together that help to form you as who you are. The book that I wrote is called Begotten with Love. It's an award-winning book. It received the Florida Writers Association Royal Palm Award for biography. It covers 5 generations of family, and it covers 150 years of American history. The way the book started was I wanted to write something for my grandkids and children to let them know about our family, especially how they ended up in America. I fortunately, as a writer, came from a long line of characters, so it made it very easy for me to find the people I wanted to write about. But when I was 35 years old, my uncle passed away, and my aunt came to me and told me that I had inherited the family Bible. Now, this was a leather-bound Bible back from the 1800s that is about that thick, and it's huge. And there's a genealogy section to it. But she told me that the genealogy portion had never been finished, and it was up to me to research it and find the rest of the information, which I was willing to do. But she took a little bit of a pause, and at 35 she turned to me and said, "Joni, by the way, your maiden name is not Elliot." So at that moment I realized I really had no idea who I was. And so that started the whole odyssey of finding myself. And I found a lot about family that I was very proud of, some of it not so proud, but all of it about family. And I think all of us, when we think about family, there are warts, but there's also so many wonderful things that we can pass on. I happen to be a second-generation American, and I was blessed to grow up in a family, a three-generation family. My grandparents were from Sweden. They both, in their schooling back in the 1890s, were taught both Swedish and English, and the English was, adequate. But my grandfather was an inventor and a furniture maker, and he was a brilliant man, and words meant a lot to him. And when he came to America, he wanted to make sure that he learned the language and the customs and everything that went with being an American. The one thing that my family did that I wish they had not was they never spoke Swedish in the household. They wanted me to be an American, and I wish I had another language, but I don't. So I'm not jealous, but I'm very proud of the people who are here and learning a second language. It makes you so much richer, and it gives you an insight that some of us don't have. So I just wanted to let you know that the decisions that you're making today affect generations in the future. And I'm so proud of my grandparents for having the courage to come to a new country. My grandfather, when he came here as a young man, was here for an adventure, as most young men will do. But he also was in love with this country, and he had dreams that he wasn't able to fulfill in Sweden, so that's why he wanted to be here. My grandmother came here as an indentured servant. She was 17 years old. Her father had passed away at a young age. There were 7 children in the family, and her mother just could not afford to feed another person. And so she signed up to come to America. She worked for a very wealthy family in Chicago and lived up to her commitment of a 5-year contract and earned her freedom. I don't know if any of us would be able to send one of our children to a new country to live and not have family or anyone else around them. But she did that. The other person that I wanted to tell you about was my great-great-grandfather on my father's side, who had always had a dream to come to America. But he stayed behind in Scotland. He raised enough money to send his 3 sons here, but his daughter was still in Scotland. And when he was 80 years old and his wife passed away, he felt it was his time. And because his daughter was established with her family, so he could leave. Well, when he got to the ship, she pinned a note on his lapel that said, "Please help my father get to America and get to Prattville, Alabama to be with his son." And so from the kindness of strangers, the Americans that already lived here, they were able to direct him. You see, he didn't know how to read. So to listen to the stories of the people that are here, I'm so proud of all of you. And I thank you for your time. And by the way, my book is for sale too.
Well, I have to say that story, when I first heard it, brought tears to my eyes. I hope it gave some of you some goosebumps for some thoughtfulness on helping the Literacy Council of Manatee County and all of our authors and all of our friends, our new friends, our old friends, everybody that I see here I've become acquainted with, and I'm so proud to say that I'm part of this organization. I have a great job. I have a wonderful job. And I want to thank you all for helping make this council what it is today and what it can grow to be in the future.
Because I just want to let these people know how important language is, and to learn a new language I can't imagine. And if there's anything I can do to encourage them, I'm happy to do it. I happen to be a second-generation American, and so I grew up in a 3-generation household, and I saw my grandparents struggle to learn language and the difference it made in their lives when they did. I wrote it specifically for my children and grandchildren to begin with. The book is an award winner. It won first place for biography in the Florida Writers Association. Yeah, so I'm very happy with it. It goes through 5 generations of family and 150 years of American history. It's a personal story, but it came to me through different sources because I had always thought that I was one person, and when I was 35 years old, when my uncle passed away, my aunt handed me the family Bible and told me that it was up to me to find the genealogy, the rest of it, on our family. And by the way, my maiden name was not Elliot. So at 35 years old, I was on a journey to discover who I really was. We're on Amazon.com, and they can go through our website and purchase through PayPal if they would prefer. Well, the one, and I know it would sound horrible to most people, but 20 years ago I had suffered a stroke that left me paralyzed on one side, couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't see straight. And I truly, truly was blessed back to full health. Because of that, a number of the doctors and nurses asked if I would write something, and I did 20 years ago, but I put it in a drawer and just forgot about it. And so I took it out recently and realized that it really does have a good message for people to help them come back to health. The other one is strictly fictional, but it has to do with family greed. I would say, looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and this is a quote that I had heard when I was a teenager, was the person who is illiterate is not the person that does not know how to read, but it's the person who knows how to read and doesn't. And that was Mark Twain that said that, by the way. But that always stuck to me, because words to me are musical. They have a joy to them, and you can find something that's healing in them, or you can find something very passionate. And so for these people to, and I shouldn't use that, these people, but for people who are learning a new language, for them to also feel that kind of joy from the words would mean a lot to me.
I'm Steve Cork. I'm here as an advocate for literacy. It's a global issue that we all must face someday, that we need to eradicate as best we can. And I'm an author, and that kind of goes with the territory. Sure I Can Explain is my most recent book. It's a book about human trafficking, which, as you might know, in Southwest Florida is a huge problem. And I sort of built on that and wrote a book with the same cast of characters that I developed in Night Moves. And it's sort of got a military bend to it, with my background being Army. I kind of inclined that way. But it talks about a military policeman, a woman who brings down an international syndicate of human traffickers. Very exciting, fast-paced, page-turner, but many tell me they had to reach straight through. Well, absolutely. You know, that's what they recommend to writers, is to write about something they know, and otherwise you start getting in trouble. So I'm pretty familiar after 27 years in the Army with military themes and military issues, and so that's what I wrote about. Well, in my military career, the last 5 years, I was assigned a task of being director of a joint doctrine writing group, and I had Marine, Navy, Air Force, and Army authors working for me, and we wrote a number of major publications signed by the military leadership of the time that described the warfighting techniques, tactics, and procedures we should use in joint operations. And I learned from that I was pretty good at this stuff. So I decided to give it a whirl and put it into fiction, and it's turned out pretty well. I'm happy with it. It's a hobby. It's not full-time. I'm not trying to make a killing. I'm certainly not, a Clancy or a Childs, and I don't fancy myself as such, but my books are well received. Yes, it's stevecork.com webpage. It talks about both my books, and I hope that you go on the net and buy a few. Absolutely, go on Amazon, and they're available. My Night Moves is not on Amazon anymore, but Sure I Can Explain is definitely there. Night Moves, they can contact me through my website. Well, I think it's vital. There's so many people who have literacy issues, from those who don't have English as their first language to those who really didn't get a decent education. And if you don't bring that group into the mainstream, you're going to forever have a lower level group of people who will struggle, and they will not be successful in this environment. And reading is the core of being able to be successful. You have to do it for everything, from your bank statement to looking for jobs to interviewing to writing a resume. You have to know English language in the United States. I do. I have one in the works right now. I was working on it this afternoon. It's another book with the same group of characters, very fast-paced. It's about weapons of mass destruction, biological weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein actually had, and had large stocks of the same. And so I'm building on that as a main plot of this next book.
I want to explain to people that the art of reading books needs to be revived in this country. A good book is more entertaining than a good movie if you find the right book and if you read it the right way. And a book is a book that you can't put down, is entertainment that you can leave and come back to at your convenience. And it'll keep you spellbound. It will give you more information. And a good writer has researched his landscape, the infrastructure of the area that he's writing about, and it'll make you feel like you're there, just like in a movie. Only in a movie, you can't get up and leave and come back 2 hours later. That's the message I want to give today. All right, The Sins of Tarrant County was my first book. It's a murder mystery, and it's a legal thriller. And I was a judge for 24 years. No. And the story that comes from The Sins of Tarrant County is about a trial that I held in my court back in the early 1980s, and then I embellished the dickens out of it, moved it to another court, and put another protagonist in the book. That protagonist happened to be a karate expert, and he needed to be a karate expert to get him out of all of the trouble I put him in that book. And that book is the only book you'll ever read where you'll find a man that has two women at one time, and it's not his fault. Yes, it got me started. A friend of mine told me I needed to write about all of the experiences that I had. So I picked out this case, one of my favorite cases, and I used that for my first novel. The next novel is called Cleansing the Sins, right here. The hitman that is featured in the first book is the protagonist in the second book. It happens 10 years later. He's terminally ill, and he goes on one last mission that is a mission of good, where he's searching for the world's #1 criminal, and he's racing his own medical clock to catch him. This is actually my best-selling book, and it's rated 5 stars as well. And the ending is very climatic, unusual, and heart-rending. It's got a sizzling love story in it that's totally unexpected. This is a sequel to this book right here. A lot of the same characters are in that book. you have a revolution occurring in Washington, D.C. that happens this year. And basically all of our federal leaders get killed in chapter 1. We start all over again. And this story is about the interim period where a small committee runs both the legislative and the executive branch during an interim period until new leaders can be trained to run for election again. Well, the interesting aspect of this is that I put in some ideas of my own about some of the things, some of the issues that we're facing today, like the fuel crisis, immigration, the federal deficit, things like this. And those ideas attracted the people who gave me this national award and was paramount in me getting that award. Well, I did, but it got hacked, unfortunately. But you can contact me at travelingsandy@gmail.com. They can get the book there, or they can get it on Kindle Reader, or if they want an autographed copy, they can write me at my email address. The ability to read will give everyone a better background about the world we live in today in all aspects of it. Different types of books, both fiction and non-fiction, are going to cover every issue that we face today on one side or the other. And it's going to make people more well-rounded and better educated. Even novels, if the authors are any good, research their material. And the information that they give you are going to be factual except for the story itself. But your background information, the streets, the weather, the people, their political leanings, all of those things, as well as the infrastructure and how modern or how backward that area is going to be put in these books. That information is more than you're going to get in a movie. And that's why it's so important that we do not lose our interest or our ability to read.
Well, it's an important event because we've been located in an older part of Bradenton in an old building for quite a number of years, and we realized that we had to make a move. And when I was talking with one of the executives at Goodwill one day, she had mentioned that they were building a facility over here and they were going to have an extra office space. So we thought this is a central location in Bradenton, located next to Goodwill. A lot of our clients shop at Goodwill, so we would it would certainly be a central location for everybody. So we're very excited about having the new location, the new office, and a brand new look. Well, our mission is an adult literacy program, and our mission statement is to empower Manatee County residents to independence through literacy. We believe if people aren't literate, they can't be independent. They can't go out shopping, they can't talk to their teachers, they can't do medicine, stuff like that. So the more literate we can help our community become, the better citizens we'll have. Okay, yes, we're all volunteer. We do one-on-one tutoring, which means every student that comes to us gets a tutor. You guys can come in. Every student that comes to us gets a tutor one-on-one because we find that that's the fastest way for them to learn. They're not learning in a class where you have different levels of teaching, like a one-room schoolhouse, but they're getting the, and we have when a new student comes to us, we have them set a goal for themselves, and we work with them. They don't necessarily have to have a book. We work with them on things they need for their work, things they need for their children, so we pick up on what they need. Well, one either finds us on our website or they find us, on the internet, whatever, and they come to us. And we do require that they take a little bit of training. I mean, if they've taught school before, they're usually well educated enough to teach somebody else. But we do have two different ways they can become a tutor. We do offer like a 2-day tutor training session where they come in a little class, or we have an online program too, where if they don't want to come, they can just go online and do it from the comfort of their home. Mainly we concentrate on the 101, but lately we had a company come to us from Anna Maria Island that they have a lot of students that needed help with their English. So we are conducting a class with them now 2 afternoons a week. Their employees stop here on their way to or from work, and we have a class, and that's working out very well. We also find that our waiting list for the learners becomes very long. So we've now started on Monday morning, we have a conversation class where anybody that's waiting for a tutor can come in just, you know, we sit around and talk about different subjects, things like that, and they're showing an interest in the program more than other people are, then we're more willing to find them a tutor as quickly as possible. Well, they can either give us a call or go online. Our phone number is 941-746-8197. Our website is www.manatee-literacy.org. Well, we think the mission is very important since 1 in 5 Manatee County residents is considered illiterate. That means they can't read a prescription, they can't go to the grocery store, and that's not a good thing to have in our community.